Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My Angular story. This week we're talking to Paul Spears. Paul, do you want to say hello?
Hello everyone.
Now we had you on episode 158. That was in October of last year. We're recording in 2018 here. And we talked about teaching Angular. Now, you work for Oasis Digital, Angular Bootcamp. I don't know what other brands are tied up there. But do you want to just give a little bit more of a background and brief introduction?
Sure. So, I work for Oasis Digital. We're a software development firm based out of St. Louis. Angular Bootcamp is one of our offerings. And as an employee of Oasis Digital, I go and I teach Angular Bootcamp, but we also have various kind of other instructors throughout the U.S., a couple of international instructors as well. And so, I work for Oasis Digital. They're the first company that I technically kind of got my official career launched with. And so I've been with them since 2000 and, about 2010. So going on 8 years now.
Nice. That's a long time. Most developers I talk to are not at a company for that long.
Yeah, I've gotten real lucky and kind of got my career started here. And as a part of what I do, I get to kind of go around, see all these other companies, see how they work. And it kind of reaffirms that, this is a good place to stick with. They keep me learning, they treat me well. So I'm going to stick with it for now.
Good deal. Well, this podcast is more about kind of capturing your story and telling your story and giving people an idea of where you came from and, what your background is. So let's go way back and talk about how you got into programming.
Yeah. So really got my start early high school, maybe even late middle school. My dad and we would go round up old discarded PCs and kind of piece them together from scratch, building out, armies of 386 and 486 machines, just because we could, and, Commodores, and putting them all together and, hacking them up and installing OSs on them and kind of making them do what we needed to do to kind of get this PC started on a budget. And so that's what really sparked the whole, I'm really into this computer stuff and I like being able to make this machine, do my bidding, And in high school, though, later years of high school, I had a teacher / mentor where I had my first computer science class. And that's where I realized that, oh, wow, there's so much more to this computer stuff other than just using it. I can actually program it as well. And so after a couple of years of high school learning C++, I was like, there's a good chance this is what I'm going to do. And so I took that and I ran with it all the way through to college and then on to become my career from there.
Cool. So you went to college, you have a computer science degree or something similar?
Yep. So I went through a kind of a pretty standard path. There was a little bit of confusion in the beginning of my college years where I was thinking I might be more into computer engineering. So I started down that route, decided that the hardware and logic versions of that were not quite what I was looking for. I really was more interested in the software. So after a year of computer engineering, switched my major to computer software. And that was pretty straight transition there because all the classes were relevant anyway. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't really even slow me down. I did take some time in college going back and forth from school to work to help pay down the costs. But other than that, taking my time through college, I ended up with a bachelor's in computer science.
Nice. Now I have a bachelor's in computer engineering, so I stayed the course, I guess. But anyway, it's interesting just to hear all the background and where people come from. Now, how old were you when you started doing the PC stuff with your dad?
So I would probably been around 13, 14 years old when we first started doing that together. I didn't really have a home PC before that. And so when we started doing that, that was my first real exposure to being able to use a computer on a daily basis. And so,
gotcha.
Yep, we spent all summer just putting them together, staying up late nights, watching the progress bars of Windows 3.0 install.
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago. So what was it that got you excited about programming? What was it that drew you in?
It's hard to really describe it, but it probably has something to do with just the kind of the logic puzzles. Every time you're trying to solve something, it's just one different kind of logic puzzle after another. All the pieces are there. All the tools that you need to figure out how to do anything you want with the computer are all available to you. It's just one giant Lego kit that you got to figure out how to put the pieces together. I think that essence of it is what really drew me in.
Gotcha.
And then similarly, though, in high school, I participated in kind of like work study like things in high school, where I'd volunteer and be able to go in and do some work for the school as just like a volunteer program. And they had me doing some office work, and it was really dry, repetitive, boring work. And this was after only a semester of computer science classes. I realized that the work I'm doing could be totally automated with just the simplest little program. And so they had me doing this work where I was taking travel reimbursement reports, and I was actually checking the mileage to see if the mileage that they were reporting matched up to the trip that they were on for their work, and just verifying that was okay. And this was back before MapQuest and Google Maps were a thing, and you had to break out the paper map and actually go and look up the mileage estimates over this distance. And I got real tired of doing that. And so in high school, I said, all right, I'm just going to, instead of doing this work for you, I'm going to make an application that'll let you put in your starting point and your destination. Is going to be a basic lookup table that's going to go ahead and just spit back the answer of what the expected travel distance would be. And so that's when it really clicked that I can use computers to solve all kinds of real world problems as well. And after that, every kind of job that I had, I kept finding a way to kind of tie it back to, I can solve this with software. Nice.
It's funny because you talk about these business processes and the ability to automate them and find solutions to them. And I mean, when I got into programming like professionally and, got excited about it, that was what drew me in. Was we had a tech support system that we were running, and they wouldn't spring for the software, so we just built it ourselves essentially. And
yeah.
I kind of forgot those roots a while back, and then recently with the podcasts and everything else that I do, somebody finally smacked me upside the head and said, "You're a coder and you can automate that stuff." And so I've gotten back into it now. and so I love these ideas that come through this, and I want to call them out when I see them, because I don't think we always recognize the actual value that we bring and the power of our skill set for the people that we work for or work with.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We've been recognizing that more and more here, and we kind of call each other out, and we keep referring back to the phrase, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. To where, here we are, we're building these automation systems and writing software suites for these big, large business processes. And yet we manually step through our own, processes all the time.
Yeah. I'm actually working on, and I'm going to be speaking in Denver in a couple weeks. Of course, this will come out after that, but I'm going to be talking about automating processes, coding processes for Angular. And yeah, it's really funny how much time we spend working on stuff that we could automate away. And especially once you get to a team of a certain size, you can almost replace that next person you feel like you need to hire with a system like a continuous integration system or things like that, where they're running all those processes for you.
Yep, exactly.
So I'm curious, how did you wind up at Oasis Digital?
As far as I can tell, sheer luck. So whenever I started on, Oasis had already been going for about, I believe it was like 8 to 10 years maybe before I even started. But it was basically just the founder, and he had a bunch of remote employees, or contractors rather, that he had hired on to be able to do particular kinds of projects. And so that had been going for like 10 years. And right before I started my career hunt, they had just opened it up to actually hire on local developers to expand the company itself and kind of take it into the next generation. And I had been applying everywhere. I was coming out of college without any real experience or mentorship in what it looked like to develop applications for real. I didn't have anyone in my family. I didn't have any personal family friends or any kind of mentorship at all to say, oh, here are the things you're looking for in a job. Here's what you're looking for in terms of questions to ask in an interview. So I had no idea what I was doing during my job search. And by luck, I happened to put in my resume to enough different search aggregators and whatnot that eventually landed on the desk here at Oasis Digital. And they were, looking. I have no idea what characteristics they were looking for specifically, but they gave me a shot. I completely bombed my interview. It was an absolutely terrible interview. I kind of walked out of there knowing that I wasn't going to hear from them again. For whatever reason, they saw something they liked and gave me a call back and said, we're going to give you another chance. And I nailed that. And here I am. As far as, how I sought them out, there wasn't any kind of like, those Oasis Digital folks, I really want to work for them. At that point, I was just throwing darts at a map and seeing what was sticking. And, luck and, I attribute my faith to having a big role in that as well. Just happening to land this right in my lap. So, no real rhyme or reason to it, but I got real lucky and I've been sticking it out and it's been going well.
I've been trying to coach people through a lot of the things that you're talking about as far as, just being out there and finding a job. And I know that Oasis Digital does the Angular Bootcamp. And so you probably have some people coming in who are going to be looking for a job afterward. And I'd love to know what your approach is to bringing people along to that place where they can apply to whatever or can work through or toward having a job.
So a lot of times, most of our students are actually developers who have been doing this for a while. No, they're not actually coming in from, I want to learn how to be a programmer. In fact, we advise that those students not apply to the class, not sign up for the class. But nevertheless, some still take it on. They take on that challenge.
Right.
And we have a very short time with them. We get 3 days with them, and we kind of do what we can with that time. A lot of time, there's lots of times for breaks where we go in and we can talk with them and advise them. We have a lot of people that will follow up with us just in casual phone calls. There are those, though, like you mentioned, that would go on looking to get hired, and we have had some actually that have taken our class that have come back and actually applied and joined us here at Oasis Digital, in fact. In terms of bringing them along, I think it goes back to one of the things I mentioned right at the beginning of this conversation, where, the thing I liked about programming was that this is just a puzzle to solve. And we just put all of our emphasis on saying, look, if you are interested in that, if you have that desire to solve the puzzle and to keep, acquiring the skills needed to solve the puzzle, everything else is really going to sort itself out. And so we put our emphasis there. In terms of adding the Angular aspects to it, it's mostly a matter of just continuing to give them the history and the building blocks of what they're doing, why they're doing it. And the API isn't really all that important at the end of the day. Like learning the actual API and which calls to make when, that's really just a side effect of what you're going to be learning. You're going to be learning about the ideas and the concepts and the big picture of how to put the pieces together. And you really don't care at the end of the day, like how the Lego snap together. You just care that you know how
Right.
you have a vision for the picture of what you're building and the basic pieces that you're going to need to build it out of.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I tell people, so I have a course on this too, that by the time this comes out will be publicly released. But, I tell people it's like, yeah, you're being hired to solve a problem. You're not being hired to write code. The code is almost incidental to all the other stuff. And so, yeah, if you get excited about solving these problems, then you're going to be fine. You just have to convince somebody that you can solve those problems. So,
yeah, that also opens up the door to hiring outside of that, happy path of CS degree, computer science background. Whenever you have people that are coming from two of our more recent hires, one of them was a psychology major, and the other one was chemical engineering, chemistry. And so they have non CS backgrounds, but because they're still applying that problem solving approach to the things they're running into, they've transitioned great into these career paths with software development.
Yep.
They're working out great. So yeah, that key is that hunger and thirst for the problem solving, and the rest of it just kind of falls in place.
Yep. I 100% agree. So what have you done in Angular that you are particularly proud of? Is it mostly the training, or are there other projects that you've done that you're excited to talk about?
Yeah. So with the training, our trainers, they probably only go out, myself included, about probably anywhere between 12 and 15 times a year where they'll do a training. The rest of that time is spent on project work. And so a large portion of my job is actually doing projects themselves. Unfortunately, by nature of what our particular company does with internal facing large enterprise, flavored apps, most of what I do isn't publicly available.
Right.
It's blocked behind a firewall with all kinds of NDAs slapped on top of it and, things of that nature. So I can't really talk about most of that, but what's been really neat is the Angular Bootcamp experience has allowed me a way to actually put my work outward facing, taking what I've learned, applying it to that Angular Bootcamp curriculum and the process that we go through with Angular Bootcamp to create an artifact that you can actually expose externally. Here in the last, I'd say it's probably been about actually a little over a year now, maybe even possibly 2. I've lost track at this point. I've actually taken over the leadership of the actual curriculum effort itself. And so whenever we get together and we have our team meetings about how should this curriculum be formed or shaped or what have you, I actually am the one that ends up being able to say, yep, that one goes into the master line of our repository for our curriculum. That one doesn't. Let's talk about that one more. Let's talk about why we're doing this and that, and kind of using the pedagogy that we've picked up, plus our Angular expertise, and kind of shepherding that towards the canonical source for our content. And so we've most recently actually open sourced that curriculum. And that to me is probably the thing I'm most proud of, is actually saying, all right, all this hard work that we've poured into this thing over the last 5 years, here we have it, and we're now open sourcing the majority of the examples from that curriculum. And so being able to take that work and actually start contributing back to the open source community is not something I often have the chance to do based on the work that we're doing. So it's nice to actually put some code out there that others can get their hands on.
I love that. I love that idea. How do you go about designing a curriculum? I mean, I'm assuming that when you started there was already something, but what do you look at?
Yeah, it was actually it was mostly ad hoc in the beginning. The person who actually started Angular Bootcamp, he was the founder here. He is the founder here at Oasis Digital. He started the bootcamp based off of his experience teaching previous technologies. And at the very early days, it was actually, we were all just live coding example after example. We had a basic outline of here are the topics that we want to talk about. And every single class we would live code through those 3 days, giving you example after example and letting the class itself kind of guide where those conversations went. And that was not a process that we could, expand upon and bring in other developers and expect everyone to kind of produce the same level of quality. And so we just started taking that shared experience, and we would have very frequent meetings of varying length, mostly like probably 2 to 3 times a week for 3 hours a day. We would just meet and we just talk about what are we doing, how is this received, and we would all just get in and hash it out and say, all right, I liked how step 102, I like how that played out. There's these little tweaks I'd like to make, and then we would all just right there in the code base together just start editing the code that we started to collect after doing this over and over again. That process kept continuing on until it got so big that we had to say, all right, we need someone to actually kind of manage a mainline version of this. And so the curriculum itself was arrived at fairly organically, just by way of collecting the customer feedback, applying a lot of the knowledge that we already had. Taking the knowledge that we had from our project work was also a very important part of it. Applying that to the curriculum, so that way we were able to trim off things that are not as important in our opinion to teach about, and we just kept ruthlessly iterating over that, and we still do even today. Now that even though Angular's on version almost 6, but may even be 6 by the time this releases, we're able to still take that curriculum and churn over it. Every time we teach it, there's something new that we're getting out of it and reapplying back to that repo. So it's really interesting progress. Really nothing formal to it. It's just mostly a continuous iteration over it and refining it.
Makes sense. So what are you working on now?
So now I just wrapped up a project, waiting to see what the next big thing is going to be. In the meantime, though, I mentioned that we just released our curriculum, the majority of our curriculum examples, open sourced. And now that we've done that, of course, we're now saying here are 500 things that we'd like to change about it. Now that everyone's scrutinizing it all day, every day. So I'm going back and cleaning up a lot of the things that we're seeing there, fixing that all up. We've been playing around with Stackless quite a bit. That's part of the open sourcing of our material, where we were utilizing Stackless to make that easy to jump in and work with. And so I've been utilizing that API a lot, playing around with it, seeing what other kinds of tools and gadgets that we can come up with to support our class. Aside from that, I've also been doing a lot with exploring different kinds of visualization tools. Mm-hmm. So we've used D3 pretty heavily in the past, and we've played around with different ways of integrating D3 and Angular. And I've just wrapped up a Canvas version of a data visualization tool that we've been selling here as an add-on for Atlassian's Jira. And so we've got a neat little D3 visualization that's rendering out to Canvas and an Angular application, and had a lot of fun building that. And so I'm thinking about actually picking that up and rewriting that same implementation using WebGL just to continue to eke out more and more performance. So those have been the big things, the curriculum and playing around with these data visualization tools.
That's really cool. So what's your favorite part of Angular?
So the favorite part for me has been I continue to learn stuff about Angular. Every time I think, I've got this Angular stuff figured out, there's nothing else to learn, something else crops up, or a new way of thinking about a particular pattern emerges. Most recently, that's taken the form of now that everyone's kind of like on the NGRX bandwagon. Over the last several months now, we've actually been kind of winding down and starting to back off that NGRX pattern a little bit. And we're seeing kind of new ways of managing state start to emerge. In particular, like the more you learn and are better able to utilize observables in RxJS, the more you can actually leverage things like the Forms API and the Router API more efficiently, and the more you can do with just those two pieces of Angular, and the less you need with NGRX. And so the thing I like most about Angular has been that shifting landscape of, all right, here's the way we're going to build an application. And then, and as those patterns have been used and tested thoroughly, you get to find simpler and simpler ways. And Angular itself is actually kind of showing up and making me realize I can just use this little piece of Angular API. I don't need additional tooling. Mm-hmm. So the more I use Angular, the more I'm using just Angular. And that's been my favorite part about it, is the more I use it, the more I can use just that, and I don't have to couple as much with it. It's kind of a weird answer, weird esoteric kind of answer, but it's been fun to see that pattern emerge.
Yep, it's definitely interesting. And I've been talking to a lot of people, and for JavaScript Jabber, and then we started shows on Vue and React, And it's interesting just to get a read on what people are looking at these days. And it seems like as far as the frameworks go, a lot of things have pretty well settled as far as how we do things. I mean, all of the three biggest frameworks anyway do components, and they have a lot of things in common, and then the way that you do it is somewhat different. And the opinions within the frameworks are out there. But yeah, now we're seeing, okay, now we're innovating in the space of build tools and the state management and a couple of other areas. And I think that's really kind of the place where we're seeing a lot of the innovation these days. And so, yeah, it's interesting to me that you bring that up as, we're learning new things in these areas, and that's what's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm also looking forward to seeing, it really feels like this is the generation of frameworks that's going to see emerge from it the fact that, the web platform itself is stable enough for us to start developing some real mature tooling on top of. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited to see what's next in terms of what kind of crazy tools we're going to get out there to build, full stack applications with, now that we have a stable web platform.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, the last part of this episode is picks. Do you have some picks for us? For you, the listeners of My Angular Story, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings.
Yeah, I got a couple. So the first one, I actually mentioned this earlier, would be Stackless. I'm not sure if anyone else has mentioned it yet. It's a really cool little tool that you can utilize, stackless.io, and you can go on there and you can point it at an Angular CLI project on GitHub, and it will automatically just pull that project into an online editor and then immediately build it behind the scenes in your browser and then run it live for you. And so it's this really nice, tight iteration tool that you can use to tinker around with any CLI project that's out there on the web. There's got a bunch of other functionality beyond that, but that's the thing that I'm most excited about for it. My other pick would be the Nintendo Switch. I recently picked one up, and it's been surprising how nice that is to be able to travel with a Switch when you're flying around, going to hotels, and having that little bit of fun and consistently be able to keep having something that you can do that isn't work whenever you're out traveling. So that was nice. I
keep trying to convince my wife that I need one of those for when I travel, and she's not convinced yet.
That's what did it. I actually got it for my birthday from my wife, and it was me mentioning, there's a guy across the aisle from me. He had a Switch when he was flying. He looked like he was having so much fun, and she finally caved. And
I'm gonna have to take notes on how you made that work. So,
yeah, no, it happened barely, but I got one now, and I took it with me on my last trip, and it was nice to have.
Yeah, I've been doing a bit of traveling lately. I mean, NGConf isn't that far because I live near Salt Lake, but I'm going to be in Seattle and Denver and Philadelphia, and that's just within the next few months, and probably at least one other conference. And so it's looking more and more likely I'll wind up in Las Vegas at some point soon too. So yeah, it'd be real nice to just be able to take it down there, because you can play it as a handheld as well as a console, and so you can do it however you feel like. But yeah, I just haven't managed to talk fast enough, I guess. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Did you have any other picks?
No, that was it. I'm good.
Okay. So I'm going to jump in with some picks. One game that I've been playing lately on my iPad and iPhone is it's called Star Realms, and it's a card game. And funny enough, it's actually you play it as the card game. So I've really been enjoying it. It's kind of my style of play. You know, it's a game that I can just sit and kind of, you know, work through, and I've really been enjoying it. So I'm going to pick that Star Realm. I'm pretty sure you can buy it as a card game too. So yeah, that's probably interesting to some folks if you're really into card or board games. And then lately, my wife and I have been playing with some friends of ours, Pandemic Legacy, and that's also a fun one. So if you're into board games at all, definitely check those out. Yeah, those are my picks. One last question I have for you is, if people want to follow you, see what you're working on these days, anything like that, are you on Twitter or have a blog or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DPS3, and you can also find me on GitHub under the same name as well. And hopefully I'll be able to start putting out some more open source now in between these projects.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this show up. Thank you for coming and talking to us and sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Fun. We will wrap this one up, folks, and we will catch you all next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.